that's when the pain began. Linda was taken to an ICU room, and we couldn't do anything. I decided that I would not squander one bit of this pain. Everything that happens in my life happens for a reason. Hundreds of millions of us are acquiring this new consciousness. We are a multisensory species that evolves by growing spiritually and grows spiritually by creating authentic power. The old understanding of power, which is ability to manipulate and control, prevents our evolution. The universe is not outside of you, it's inside, and there's no outside. What lies behind your eyes is more powerful than what lies in front of them. Temptation is a dress rehearsal for a negative karmic event. It shows you what a frightened part of your personality is planning if you want to change not only yourself, but the world. Now is both the time and the place to do it. I woke up in the Earth School. We knew about it, but now I was in it and I was awake in it. And I heard these words very clear in my mind. Everything that Linda and I have shared from the beginning has had to do with a new consciousness, multisensory perception, that is replacing the old consciousness, which is limited to the five senses and which understands power as the ability to manipulate and control. The new consciousness is not limited to the five senses, and it understands power as alignment of the personality with the soul, with harmony, cooperation, sharing, and reverence for life. And the old power is obsolete, but more than obsolete, with the arrival of the new consciousness, the old understanding of power, which is ability to manipulate and control, is now counterproductive to our evolution. It prevents our evolution. In other words, it produces only violence and destruction. This is the new territory we're in. And Linda and I have shared this new territory, how to create authentic power, what the tools are, emotional awareness, responsible choice, consulting, intuition. And it's been a wonderfully deep, continually revealing, exciting, and illuminating conversation for us and for the people that we've shared it with. Then Linda's soul went home to non-physical reality 2 years ago on August the 6th, 2022. And that started transformations in me that are still in motion. First of all, everything that we shared that our non-physical teachers have given us, we know is so. I've transformed myself from a young person who was macho, insecure, that's what macho means, and addicted to sex, and didn't really care for people or even relate to people. They were just things in my life to use. And I'm different now. And it's because of the tools that we've been given, and I've used them, and Linda's used them, and a lot of people who we've shared them with are using them. So the first thing, I already knew these tools were true, or I knew that they worked, but when Linda's soul went home, I started to see things in ways I'd never seen before. The new consciousness applies to me. It's my consciousness. It's our consciousness. Everyone, hundreds of millions of us, are acquiring this new consciousness. Some of the things that have come to me after Linda's soul returned home to non-physical reality. And they are remarkable. For example, there comes a time when it's difficult to use language like this because I disappear. You disappear. You simply don't exist anymore. But of course, I'm still here. We're still talking. You're Amrit, I'm Gary. So language doesn't follow. And in fact, to go where my consciousness has been showing me, you need to leave your intellect behind because it won't work. It's a tool that's inappropriate. Inappropriate's too weak a term. It doesn't work. It doesn't fit. The intellect is designed to analyze and compare data that the five senses provide it, to assist the personality in pursuing external power, manipulation, and control. It does not work outside of that, outside of those parameters. That's what it was designed to do, and it does it well. It's done it well for 300,000 years. But now we are no longer a five-sensory species, evolving by surviving, and surviving by pursuing external power, manipulation, and control. We are a multisensory species, rapidly becoming so, that evolves by growing spiritually and grows spiritually by creating authentic power, the alignment of the personality with the soul. This is the new territory. I love sharing it, but these things that have been occurring to me are simply new in ways that I'm challenged to explain. So I've given up trying to explain them because they can't be explained, but they can be experienced. And that's what I want to share with you. In fact, as our teachers, Linda's and mine, were sharing these things, at one time I asked them, if I can't explain this, if I can't understand this, why are you explaining it to me? And this teacher said, because when you consider it and ponder it, that brings into being the possibility that it exists. And the possibility that it exists allows you to search for it and experience it. And so I share that with you now. Let me give you an example of, well, first of all, I'll start with what happened. Linda had a stroke. An ambulance took her to the nearby regional medical center. It should have been simple. Piece of cake. They keep her overnight and they returned her the next day after observation. The surgeon couldn't do it. He could not perform a procedure called an endovascular thrombectomy. When a person has a stroke, if that block that caused the stroke, which is what a stroke is, a block in an artery that prevents blood from flowing into a part of the brain, if that block is removed within 2 hours, the chances are very good there'll be no lasting damage. With an endovascular thrombectomy, that window is extended to 24 hours. So I was, of course, concerned, but I didn't expect what happened. The surgeon was waiting for us, took her right away into the operating room, and 20 minutes later told me, I can't do it. I couldn't. I tried going in through a vein in her leg, or an artery, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't reach the block, which is here, in the center of her head, right about the third eye. It was a massive stroke. Half of Linda's brain was deprived of oxygen and was dying. And he couldn't do anything about it. He said, I tried going in through her wrist, over her shoulder, and I couldn't do it. He said her arterial architecture is 1 in 7. It's got curves in it. It's just not straight. And I couldn't get my device around those curves. He said, there's one unconventional procedure. I'll do it if you tell me to. I can puncture her carotid artery, which is in this neighborhood. And I said, yes, please do it. And 20 minutes later, he told me the same thing. I couldn't do it. I couldn't. I pushed so hard that my device started to move out of its sheath in her artery. I'm sorry. Well, so Linda was taken to an ICU room, and that's where the stroke unfolded. And the doctors and the nurses and I watched, and we couldn't do anything. And her soul went home 3 days later. So when I got home, it was the first time coming home without Linda. And I walked into our bedroom, and there was a little purse that we'd gotten together on Maui. And she carried it almost everywhere, just a little thing. and I put my hands on it, and all of a sudden, Amrit, I heard this shriek, this shrieking scream. And I thought, I've never heard a sound like that. Do animals scream like this? And it's coming from me. And then I heard a moan, this long, agonizing moan. I'd never heard anything like that. And I thought, do animals moan like that? And it's coming from me. That's when the pain began. The pain had begun. And it was unlike anything I'd experienced or even knew could exist. It was like a mountain, not a big one, like Mount Everest. I couldn't go over it, under it, around it, through it, and it was there. So I decided that I would not squander one bit of this pain, because the one thing I know is that everything that happens in my life happens for a reason, and that reason is my spiritual growth. So I set this intention: no distraction, no television, no nothing, just to experience this pain. I didn't know if I could live through it. At one point, I didn't want to. I didn't think I could. Um, and then 2 days later, I was sitting by sort of a pool that looks like a lagoon. I was watching the trees gently move in the wind, and I had a realization. I don't have a reason for living now, except to love people. I might have thought something like that before, but now it was so. And that was the beginning of the beginning for me. And that change is permanent. So this is the depth and power of the experiences that I've been having. And by the way, I wrote personal messages while all of this was happening, or while a lot of it was happening, so I wouldn't have to try to remember it later. And then I asked the team to put it on our website. There's 11 personal messages, and you can read them. You can go to seatofthesoul.com, and you'll see in the menu Celebration of Linda Francis, which is a video that we created to celebrate Linda. And then underneath that, it says, read Gary's personal messages. And this is one of them. This is one of the first ones. So you can be there with me, so to speak, while this was happening initially. And then other things continued to happen. Well, Linda handled all of our finances. So not only was I in this pain, I had to learn everything she was doing. What checking accounts do we have? Where are they? Which ones pay for which? What are the account numbers? So I was doing all of that while I was trying to function. And one morning, I was driving out of a bank parking lot, and I woke up in the Earth School. I don't know how else to describe it. We talked about the Earth School for 27 years. That's this domain of time and space and matter and duality. It's where we learn. We're born into it when our incarnation enters. We die when our soul returns home and discards the incarnation, the personality. I talked about it, we knew about it, but now I was in it and I was awake in it. It wasn't in front of me and around me anymore. I was in it. And it was bigger than my tiny town in Oregon. It included Shanghai. It included Mumbai. It included Dubai. It included the galaxies. It included star systems. It included all of space, our temporary cocoon. This was the Earth School, and I woke up in it. And I was surprised at how asleep the people in the world I just woke up from are. And I was surprised at how asleep I was in the world I just woke up from. These were huge surprises, both of them. Then, the next day, I realized that the world that I woke up into is exactly the same as the world that I woke up from. The people across the street, I mean, it's the same. The next day, I woke up to the fact that I'm the same that I was before I woke up in the Earth School, except I'm awake. And I remember this Zen saying that everyone knows: before enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water. After enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water. I don't know what enlightenment means, Amrit, but this before and after experience describes exactly my experience. It's now my experience. Before I woke up in the Earth School, my path was creating authentic power, cultivating love, and challenging fear. After I woke up in the Earth School, my path is creating authentic power, cultivating love, and challenging fear.
Guys, as always, for some reason, when Gary's on the Inspired Evolution podcast, he just shares absolutely his everything, his all. Now, I know you're loving these podcasts here on the Inspired Evolution, and I just wanted to let you know that everything around here is powered and empowered by your subscription to the channel. Thank you so much to all of you that are subscribed. And for those of you that aren't, please do take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Like I said, everything you see around here is powered by your subscription to the channel. Thank you so much for your incredible love and support. Without too much further ado, back to Gary, who's about to dive in even deeper.
So there's two things that have happened quickly within a month after Linda's soul went home. I'll tell you one more thing. So, I mean, it's because I want to share these things. Our support team, which are people who've all been our students for anywhere from 18 years to several years. There are 9 of them, a core group. And they meet twice a year in the fall and spring. Usually it's to decide what we're going to do the next year and things like that. This year, Linda's going home was our agenda. And we were still shocked. We were in grief. We felt her presence. And at the same time, we were grieving her. So we decided we were going to make a video to celebrate Linda's life. But not a celebration like a memorial or a wake or a eulogy, but to show people that the end of an incarnation is a time for celebration, to celebrate a journey through the Earth School that is voluntary, that an incarnation of a soul has made. It's not a time for grief and loss because nothing is lost. Although I was grieving loss, this was a time that was all of this wrapped up together. So once we decided to do the video, we assigned each other tasks. Find a cameraman, find a venue, find flowers and make a beautiful altar. And I remembered a place that Linda and I go to every Christmas and New Year's season, and a huge canvas replica of the labyrinth in the cathedral at Chartres in France is on the floor, and it's all lit up with candles around it. It's glorious. And that's where everyone comes to be in the candlelight and to walk the labyrinth and to walk it with one another and to give hugs. I knew Linda would love this place, so I chose that for the venue. And when we arrived, nothing happened the way I thought it would. Nothing. First of all, as I was walking in on the sidewalk to the door that Linda and I had walked hand in hand many times, I didn't know if I could stand. My knees started to wobble, and I started to get sick to my stomach. And I heard these words very clear in my mind. This cannot be happening. This cannot be happening. And I had to hold on tight to the hand that was holding mine to make it to the door. This candlelit room, high-ceilinged room, like a gymnasium, that was so warm and I thought so fondly of in candlelight, in the daylight, was a large gray cinder block room. When we got in it, yeah, it was not the cozy, warm, loving environment I thought I remembered. Uh, when we got in it, oh, our cameraman, who had recorded 15 events for Linda and me, forgot to bring the light diffusers. The projector was too big. In order to work, it had to be in the center of our circle where we didn't want it. Every time we tried to play a video of Linda, it froze to buffer. Every time we tried to play music through the speakers, we got static. We knew this wouldn't be the major problem because the original videos and the original audios would be inserted into the video we were producing, and it would be a beautiful experience like ours. But nothing was going right. And then I started to talk, and my voice sounded to me and what I was saying like a dirge. It wasn't at all the energy that I wanted to share. But as I was speaking to this small group of people that love me and love Linda and that we love, everything began to change for us. And this big gray cinder block room became our soundstage. And we started to do retakes and rewrite again the script. And we made it right there. And it's joyful. It's joyous. You can see sometimes it's hard. Someone will be talking about Linda, and it's hard to do it without tears, but they're celebrating her at the same time. And we wanted to show people how you can celebrate a journey through the Earth School. When it was done, we decided to have dinner together. So we walked over to a restaurant. There were 20 of us. And I knew the owner is a lovely, loving place. And they put us all at a long table made out of several little tables pulled together. And after she took the order, the server came over to me and said, "Would you like this on one bill or separate tabs?" I said, "Separate tabs." That's what I always said. I was always stingy with money. But I couldn't let it be. I had to go after her and say, "Wait, I changed my mind. Put it all on one bill and give it to me." I wanted to buy everyone the meal. No second agendas. It felt good. I'd never experienced that before. And the next morning, this realization came to me quietly, but with authority. I'm generous. And that's been permanent. These are just 3 of the things that started this journey after Linda's soul went home. So I found myself with no reason for living except to love people. And I do love them, love that, and love it. And I love my life. I'm awake in the Earth School, and I'm generous. And then my consciousness began to change in other, even more radical ways. These are understandable.
You did an amazing job, I would say, of explaining the experience of just how expansive this new consciousness can really feel. And yet it seems a necessary catalyst, if I can call it that, which sounds a bit rude, which I apologize for that, was the insurmountable pain that you're experiencing. Is pain a necessary ingredient for waking up in your, what do
No,
you think about that?
no, it's not. It's not what I think, it's what I've been told. I was told later, so Gary, a part of your psyche and your orientation is that suffering is required for spiritual growth. I said, that is incorrect. It's not necessary at all. So this is these were my experiences. And if I went back and would write it again, which I could, I can't write it again. That's written. It's past. It's done. It's gone. It's not actually gone, but that's another story. So the answer to your question is no. It's possible to learn wisdom through love and trust. I chose for most of my life to learn it through fear and doubt.
One of the other things that was really present for me was your description of language early on in the sharing, because you were talking about how in this new consciousness that's emerging, language for so many of us is this primary tool of evolution. Our human species being able to cooperate through language has been this incredible gift. We look at the different modes of evolution, and language always stands out as, this is when man started to communicate with one another through language. And almost it was inexplicable in your sharing that I was feeling like we'd, had a period prior to language, then we were gifted with language, and now we're sort of gifting into the next space beyond language once again. And it's almost, as you described, the tools that got us here aren't quite the tools that'll get us there.
They are not at all the tools. And the tools, there came a time, maybe about 3 or 4 or 5 months ago, when my teacher told me, one of them, said, Gary, you've entered a new phase of your evolution. And I said, what's the difference? And he said, you will no longer need to record and transcribe what I say and then study it. Instead, you will partake of it. And that began this latest phase of my evolution. And that is the beginning to experience things that are real, but can be experienced. For example, one of the things I was told is, Gary, the universe is not outside of you. It's inside. The universe is inside you, and there's no outside. And I thought, oh, I can't share this. This sounds so narcissistic and solipsistic and self-centered, and and it sounds preposterous even to me. I was complaining to my own non-physical teacher. And he said, that's because you are not yet aware of the extent of your creative capacity and your responsibility for it. So I started to do an experiment with myself. Again, I love watching trees as they blow a little bit in the breeze. And I thought, well, now I'm looking at the universe. It's outside of me. Of course, it's outside. Everybody knows that. Everybody experiences it. But so I'm looking at the trees and they're outside. Now I'm going to pretend that I'm looking and what I'm seeing is inside me. So I did. I do that for a few minutes. The trees are blowing, same trees. This is inside of me. I'm looking inside, not outside. Okay, enough. Now I'm going back to the way things really are. Yep, everything's outside of me again. Then I experiment again. Now it's inside. Yeah, now it's inside. Then I went back and forth like that several times. And there came a time when I couldn't go back to outside again. I couldn't make the trees outside of me anymore. They were inside. Now this caused a lot of questions to come up in me. Let me let you be with that.
Yeah, I can imagine an infinite an infinitude of questions appearing in that space. How did you
Now, I hope you will not edit this podcast so that people don't hear the silence, because in the silence there's the beautiful things that are happening to you and your face and mine. So don't request that you do that. You just let it all be. Because I asked our teacher, well, what can I do? And the teacher said, nothing. Do nothing. be. And so my new phase of evolution has unfolded in that context. So I can put it into this kind of language. In the old consciousness, which is limited to the five senses, there is this uncrossable barrier, insurmountable barrier between in here and out there. And that's why people do not understand, and five-sensory humans do not understand and cannot understand how inner transformation can affect or bring into being outer transformation. That barrier does not exist in the new consciousness. That barrier is not a part of the new consciousness. And from that perspective, it's evident that the only way that you can change the world is to change yourself. So you can let go conceptually of the difference between in here and out there. It doesn't exist. It appears as though there's in here and there's out there, and the two are two, but the two are not two, they are one. There is only one, and you are that.
Hi there, guys. I wanted to take a quick moment just to introduce you to my one-to-one coaching. It's something that I deeply love doing. As you can tell, conscious conversation is such a massive part of my life. And having one-to-one, deep, meaningful conversations with people where I get to show up as your brother or as the coach or as your mentor has been such a gift for me personally, and a gift for lots of the people that I have supported on the journey of living a more spiritually empowered, spiritually powered, spiritually aligned life. You don't have to take my word for it. Here's some examples of people all around the world that have experienced profound transformations through this coaching experience.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines.
He's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing, and Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
In control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him, and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate, because you won't be disappointed.
Alrighty, so hopefully that's inspiring your evolution onwards and upwards. And if you are so inspired to evolve, you can book in a one-to-one call with me directly at www.amrit.coach/life. And guys, if I can say so myself, I do think this is something quite special. Most people that I see building things online don't really work with people this deeply, this intimately, one-on-one as things start to grow, just because it is so time intensive. And yet I'm so deeply passionate about the transformation that comes from one-to-one coaching that just isn't available anywhere else. It would be my absolute honor and a pleasure to support your spiritual awakening, your spiritual path, your spiritual unfoldment. It is my life's work. I look forward to seeing you in the call. Back to today's podcast. Can I ask a question about the new consciousness that's emerging? Because I've heard in other forums that particularly the last 2,000 years, but the phrase being that belief has gotten us this far, and yet now experience is part of the new what's emerging. Like, the human experience thus far was belief was really paramount, and yet experience is becoming more paramount, and that's currently a shift we're undergoing. Can I ask you about that and the current shift?
Of course. What would you like to know?
Well, does that land and resonate with you? Like, because belief has gotten us potentially this far, and experience.
No, belief has gotten us into this hell that we're living in. Belief, not experience. I live in a Christian country. I'm not Christian, but I grew up here. I learned it. I know something about it by osmosis. At the heart of Christianity is one singular message: love. Well, how much love? A lot of love. Well, what kind of love? How will I know it's the love? Do you love your neighbor enough to die for your neighbor? If the answer is no, you're not in the experience yet. That is not the same thing as Christianity. Christianity is the 5 sensory structure that has encrusted itself around the kernel of truth that the Christ left in his 5 sensory culture 2,400 years ago. The organization pursues external power, not authentic power. It competes. It competes with other religions. It competed with kings. The Pope was a potent source, more powerful than kings in the medieval ages in Europe. Now, so the religion that forms around a kernel of universal truth is like if you inject a grain of sand into an oyster, the oyster will encrust it to protect itself. That incrustation is the religion, and the kernel of truth in the case of Christianity is love. But it's not just Christianity, it's every religion. Every religion has a kernel of truth. Buddhism, that's enlightenment. Perception beyond the 5 senses, perception more brilliant than 1,000 suns. That was the kernel of truth that Siddhartha, once he became the Buddha, left in his culture. And that incrustation around it is not the truth, the kernel, but the 5 sensory organization called Buddhism. That I have explored a little bit, even as much or more than Christianity. And I go into a Buddhist temple and I see Buddhists and they're shoving each other with their elbows, trying to get into position to put their incense stick at the foot of a statue of the Buddha. It's the same thing with Hinduism. It's the same thing with Baha'i. The religion that forms around a kernel of universal truth stands apart from and against the kernel of truth that the founder, which they claim is their own, has put into his 5 sensory culture. Well, the time has come to start experiencing, not be cynical, like, no, I don't think so, that's nonsense, but cynical in the sense of, can that be true? Could that possibly be true? Let me see. Why am I resisting this? Let me look into it. Any belief system you have that has an element of fear in it is one that I suggest will not take you as far as a belief system that has no fear in it. Every belief system that is produced and supported and nurtured by a religion has fear. It's especially evident for me in this country. If you're not saved, you're going to hell. And here you have to believe too, because you can't experience what hell is like, but it's eternal and it's unbearable. And that's what you're going to experience if you do not take the Lord Jesus Christ as your salvation. Well, that takes belief. It takes belief. I never believed it because I wasn't Christian. But since then, I have experienced love and I've experienced this energy, which I think would be called the Christ energy. And there is no fear in it. There is no fear, Amrit. There is joy. There is openness. There is equality.
I don't think it's damning anyone either. Touch wood.
It damns no one. There is no such thing. It is opening of the heart. This energy opens its heart. And it opened my heart. I think Hinduism is remarkable. I think the Bhagavad Gita, no, the Mahabharata is the most amazing production. In another culture, Christian, they say the Bible is the story. The Mahabharata is the story also, much more complex and prolonged. One fragment of it itself, the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, carries the wisdom beyond all necessity for belief. And Krishna tells Arjuna, the greatest warrior in the world, who loses his courage at the beginning of the greatest battle in the world, which I think is the battle that goes on inside of us all the time. He explains these things in a way that Arjuna can understand, and hopefully people that read the Bhagavad Gita can begin to glimpse, can allow themselves to ponder and consider that the possibility of the existence of these things. So, belief, no. There is, at some point, everyone will have a belief system. So to find your way in this infinitude of possible beliefs, look for one that has no fear. I suggest that the one that I've been describing is one that you can experiment with. It has no fear. That does not mean that it has no experiences of fear within your living experience, but those experiences themselves come from love. They are gifts from the universe that show you aspects of yourself that originate in fear and that prevent you from giving the gifts you were born to give, that prevent you from loving. They are themselves love. There is nothing but love. And eventually, you will come to realize that love heals everything, and love is all there is. So, as far as belief, pick a belief system that you feel has no judgment in it, has no condescension, has no superiority or inferiority, has no above and below, has no better and worse, but one in which this belief system that I'm describing to you is my belief in the way that the universe works. The universe looks in terms of cause and effect. If you participate in a cause, you will participate in the effect. In the East, that's called karma. If the cause that you are always choosing is an intention, and the intention in the Earth School is always love or fear. And if you choose the intention of love, you produce consequences for yourself that are constructive, healthy, wholesome, and life-supporting, meaningful, and full. And those are the consequences you will experience. That's your karma. If you choose to act or speak from the intention of fear, you produce the opposite. You produce consequences that are destructive, empty, painful. And that is the consequence. Those are the consequences that you experience. That is your karma. And there's no judgment. This is the nature of the Earth School. There is never a right or a wrong. There is only possibility. And whatever choice you make, it creates consequences, and you experience them until eventually you begin to connect the dots between your choices of intention and the consequences you create. What more effective learning environment could ever be devised or imagined? There's no blame, no judgment. There is no time limit on it.
Hey there, guys. As Gary's alluding to, quick question. Experience is a really profound part of this new shift that we're moving into with new consciousness. What are you currently experiencing in this particular podcast? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Back to the episode. I wanted to ask about that today because fear often masquerades as rationality, and so many of us, in the world that we're navigating, it's like that's the rational choice, and yet it's the fearful choice.
Not necessarily. It's you can use your intellect to cooperate. You can use your intellect to cooperate in creating better educational systems, better ways of feeding everyone, better ways of thinking about health and disease. Or you can use, you can address any of these same things with the intention of fear and produce entirely different consequences. It's the intention with which you act or speak that produces consequences, not the action, not the word. So you can use your intellect. For example, when I was in San Francisco, I knew a friend and one of her friends that I liked, a very nice guy, worked at the Tracy Livermore Laboratory. They produced nuclear weapons. I think the one he was working on at the time was a neutron bomb. This was a dream of the military. Can you imagine it? A bomb that will destroy people but leave infrastructure, everything else intact. Buildings, electric grids, telephone systems, none of that destroyed. Only people who needs them. That's the military dream. That's what he was working on. And he was working on teams. And he was a nice guy. And he was not sinister. He was just a pleasant, nice guy. So our new consciousness, the one that started to emerge in the late 80s and will be complete in another generation and a half, includes all of this. The importance of intention, the importance of the heart, the importance of emotional awareness, the importance of choice, your choice, responsible choice. All of these are things that Linda and I were taught and taught. Let's talk about this on another podcast. But temptation, that's a remarkable dynamic that is not at all what people usually think it to be. It's not a creation of an outside malevolent energy or source like the devil. Temptation is a dress rehearsal for a negative karmic event. It shows you what a frightened part of your personality is planning to do unless you intervene and choose to do something else. It draws negativity, potential negativity from your awareness, from your consciousness, and shows it to you so you can decide what to do about it. So you can make a choice about what you're going to do before your decision produces consequences that spill out of your energy sphere and into the energy sphere of others. That is the moment that karma is created.
That makes a lot of sense. I want to dive back into responsibility for a quick sec, because you mentioned before that it's all happening inside and that the universe is being created within. And the play on words that sort of...
That's what I first thought. There's got to be a problem. What I discovered is that I am a unique expression of the universe. And you are also a unique expression of the universe. And so is everyone a unique expression of the universe. You are not responsible for the universe once you discover that is inside you, that you are a unique expression of that universe. You're responsible for your choices of love or fear. We have talked about such rich things.
Yeah.
And instead of adding more rich things on top of these rich things, we should let ourselves and our dear viewers think, or more importantly, feel about what they've heard and ask themselves, can this really be so? What did I most resonate with when I heard Gary and Amrit speaking? What most resonated with me? And by the way, a resonance can be a pushing away. It can be a recognizing something of truth, but a frightened part of your personality immediately comes up and says, yeah, but no, look what that will cause in your life. But often resonance just means, yeah, I recognize that. I want to explore that. And what part of what Gary or Amrit said did I have a reaction to? Did I find repulsive and push away? And look at that. Not judge it, just look at it and see is what did I not like about Gary or Amrit in that moment? And then write it down and then look inside yourself to see if you can find any of those things. Because if you can, you'll experience a wonderful alchemical process. Your heart, your rigidity and your judgments will melt and your heart will open because you'll see in yourself what you've been judging. So I was thinking that maybe this is a good time to take this beautiful talk that we've had, and I love talking with you, Amrit, and let us and let the people who've been listening to us do what they will with it. Literally, what they will. You have volition. You can immediately get distracted into something else or choose to. In that case, it would be an unconscious intention. If you're not too sure what you're doing, you're just suddenly doing something else. Or you can consciously choose to stay with what it is that you're experiencing. That's always a good place to start. It's the only place to start because it's the only place that keeps you in now. And there's no other place you can be. There's other places your awareness can be, but it's always drifting or being distracted now. So if you want to change not only yourself, but the world, now is both the time and the place to do it. There's no other.
Gary Zukav. It is always beyond a pleasure. It is such a treat to have you here. I do have a few more questions. Best left for another podcast. As you said, I think we've covered so much ground. And yeah, it can be very great neural food fodder to just continue to crunch. And yet, the invitation here that I'm hearing is to sit with it, to experience. One of the words that dropped in for me today around this podcast was imperience, which is a weird sort of thing that my mind does sometimes, which is a bit of a
What is
play
the
on
word?
words. Inperience, to have an experience, but X sort of implies outside, and to inperience is to sort of have an inperience within. So that was something that dropped in for me. Should I go look at whether it's been trademarked? Anyway, but
Well,
honestly,
you could have done that, but we've already discussed the reality that in the new consciousness, the distinction between inside and outside doesn't exist. It's only in the old consciousness. So you could trademark it in the old consciousness. But in the new consciousness, there's nothing you can do about the experienced reality or imperienced reality, or however you want to express it, even though there's no you. The reality that to change the world requires changing you. In other words, what lies behind your eyes is more powerful than what lies in front of them. And even then, we're depending upon a distinction that has no reality. But It can be experienced. And that's what we're talking about. Experience, not belief.
Gary, these podcasts are always an experience. Thank you so much for sharing yourself, as always, so abundantly here with myself, the tribe, the audience, everyone. And as always, links to all your books in the show notes below. For those that want to check them out and dive deeper, I will put a link to our previous podcast below as well.
We started a new program called An Evening with Gary Zukav. So if you'd like to have experience more of this, it's a monthly call, and it's a subscription program. You'll find it on our website, seatofthesoul.com. It's one of many new programs that we've created. I mean, we've created a lot of them. But on this one, you get to ask the questions. You don't have to depend on Amrit to ask the question that's in your heart when you're hearing Amrit and me speak, although he does a good job of that. But when you're on An Evening with Gary Zukav, which is a monthly broadcast, you get to ask the question. And I love answering these questions.
Beautiful. I'll put a link to that in the show notes below for that one, for those that want to connect directly to Gary. I can attest it is always such a treat and such a pleasure. And Gary, as always, I do want to thank you for your time here today. And obviously that is so true. And yet so much of our conversation continues to stand on the shoulders of the incredible life that you've lived and the experiences and the depths with which you've continued to champion your own spiritual evolution through it all, and thick and thin, high and low. I'm conscious that it takes on some level a courage to be that open and vulnerable and share all your pieces with everybody so that they can learn and grow from a place of love. And yet just your love for all of us and where we're all headed and what's possible is just, it's palpable. I'm just so grateful for you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Amrit. It's a joy. It's a joy.
Hey there, you. Thank you so much for your inspirations to evolve. Watching Gary and myself sharing in this conversation all the way through. On screen shortly will be another conversation with Gary Zukav, where we dived in super deep to how he processed all his grief. It was a really profound conversation, and also a deep conversation on the seat of the soul, intuition, intention, choice. So both of those conversations and another on screen shortly for you to take your evolution, your inspirations further. Just before I do, just a friendly reminder, everything you see here at The Inspired Evolution is powered and empowered by your subscription to the channel. Thank you so much in advance for taking the time to subscribe. I appreciate you dearly for doing so. Love you for doing so. Thank you so much. So please do take a moment, hit subscribe. It helps with everything that you see here. And literally everything you see around here is powered and empowered by your subscription. On screen now, go further with Gary Zukav here at The Inspired Evolution. See you there.